at some point, the wealth of this continent, and it is already unfortunately happening, is growing slower or declining. Once you have declining growth and declining wealth, usually social strife starts to happen because we're used to the way of living and none of us want to step back. But if you don't have any value in any digital product whatsoever, that will happen to our kids.
Welcome to the 7th season of In Check with Fintech by PCN. This season, we're thrilled to bring you exclusive insights from some of the most influential leaders in the fintech world. Get ready for candid conversations as they share their personal journeys from career-defining highs to the toughest challenges they faced. We'll also dive deep into the game-changing impact of AI, the latest industry trends, and what the future holds for fintech innovation. So, buckle up and stay tuned for an exciting season ahead. On this episode of In Check with Fintech, we have the pleasure of speaking with Christian Pirkner, CEO of Bluecode. With a rich background in technology and finance, Christian has been instrumental in advancing mobile payment systems across Europe. Under his leadership, Bluecode has expanded its reach, offering secure and seamless payment experiences to millions of users. Christian's commitment to innovation and his deep understanding of the fintech landscape have positioned him as a key figure in the industry's evolution. Enjoy listening.
I did notice when I walked in that on the cathedral, there's a big poster of, I guess it's the Bitpanda founder promoting Bitpanda.
That could well be.
I was like, why is Chris not on that cathedral?
Because he has a product now that works really well. It's an impressive story.
True, it is. Yeah. It's an Austrian success story.
It is probably the Austrian success story, at least in the fintech space.
Yeah.
And interesting, the phases they took. In the very beginning, very rebel phase, of course, and the whole establishment was, I wouldn't say against it, but was very critical and very doubtful.
Yeah.
And then it took the phases of successes and proof that it works, and they focus a lot on being the regulated one that pays attention to the laws.
Yeah.
And now they're doing deals with Raiffeisen Group, which is a very traditional banking group. And now one license deal after the other with marquee names. So hats off making the transition from the rebel to one of the leaders in crypto exchange and markets.
Is that a dream for you as well, to be where they are at some point? Not in the crypto space, obviously, but I guess with Bluecode?
I guess a dream. I rarely have a dream about other companies.
Okay.
The dream is to change lives. Mm-hmm. So in one sense, now that you say it, they probably do a great service to many people who get into investments and hopefully do it responsibly and that well, so that their lives become easier. Mm-hmm. And so that clearly is a great dream to chase, yes.
But that's interesting. Is that your red thread kind of always with the company? Because you've obviously founded a company before. Has it always been changing people's lives? Has that always been kind of your purpose, if you will?
It sounds so big. That, I think the key, it's fun to make even a little dent to make life just slightly better than it was before. That's a fun mission to be on.
True, yeah.
And so I guess, in all the three that I did before, that was always this element driving it. And so, I think that's a very, very fun thing. If you get it up in the morning and you work day in and out, and in the end, you can see that it actually created, even if how tiny ever, made life slightly better. That's fun.
True, yeah. Is that why you joined Bluecode? Because you thought, okay, this is a company that I think I can make that dent with?
The honest answer is it was more of an accident, like everything in life. So I joined Bluecode on the wish of the Austrian government has a fund that they target to invest in startups. It's called AWS. Yeah. And I was in the jury of that fund. So I was able to see a few Austrian startups. And the original idea was, the original founder was presenting the idea. And back then it felt already that this is quite a mission impossible.
What was the original idea?
The originally was a barcode-based payment app, right? And so that's clearly something great, but an app for a payment basically building your own network to be able to pay is a mission impossible. So that's why, the reason I got into this was not that this is going to change the world or make it even better. The reason was this is not possible. And so since this was taxpayer money, the ambition was, how could it be possible? Right? It won't be an app that changes the world. You would have to build a new scheme to change the world or to make a better experience. And that's then, one led to the other. And that's what in the end it became.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When we'll talk a bit more about Bluecode and what you're trying to do. But going back to what you've done before with having co-founded Mood Logic and the experiences you've gained, I guess, there as well as after that, what would you say has been the main experience that is now helping you to overcome certain challenges or to kind of make your vision true at Bluecode?
I think the most important thing you learn in this startup business is that it's the journey. The final destination likely will change. You probably should have a North Star of where you think this should end up.
Yeah.
But the journey should be fun, to be around passionate people, to chase the dream. But knowing that in that journey, you will have at least as many downs as you have ups. And if you do it the first time, it feels like a horror show that in one day you feel you rule the world, and the next day this whole thing is driving against the wall. If you do it the second, third, or now fourth time, it's almost fun if a downturn comes, because that's when now everyone on deck. What do we do now? Right, to really make sure you drive through those for sure to come downturns. So the best thing that's prepared me for now is having lived this a few times, having almost driven against the wall multiple times, and so it can't shock you anymore, and it can certainly not scare you anymore.
You train the muscle, basically.
Exactly right.
That's the thing, yeah. Yeah, I think life in general is a roller coaster, but indeed in startup world or in founder world for sure, it's very much ups and downs.
I would argue this is the job if you like that the path is not clear, if you like that the goal might change, and if you like that you have no way out, if you enjoy those situations, then this is the best job you could ever have. If you feel uncomfortable in such situations, then I wouldn't advise it, because it is really, quite stressful to know what you've maybe worked on for years will not pan out for exogenous shocks or for whatever reason. And so, you got to have fun in that, and then it's the most fun job in the world.
But I guess that uncomfortableness also could get the best out of you, right? I think you are sure you are sometimes still in uncomfortable positions,
Absolutely.
but it gets the best out of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But that's when focus then becomes key. When you step all the way up again and say, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And what is now, given the situation, the best way to reach that target? And that might mean throwing away things that you have built or assumptions that you've had. So it's quite brutal, but that's the only way to get out of a situation where you seem to be checkmate. And so.
Do you remember, now you've been with Bluecode, I think you started an executive board member, right, in 2020. Now you're CEO since 1.5 years?
Yep, a bit longer, yeah.
Do you remember what your kind of first challenge was and when you were with Bluecode?
On this project, it's been literally dozens, yes. I completely underestimated so many things. I was not in payments before.
No, exactly, yeah.
My first gig was in digital music, and then digital video, and then digital advertising. So all happy, fun industries that are more based on enjoyment of life. And now comes an industry that is, in my view, one of the most important, because it's a very frequent use case. We all pay for our goods and services on a daily basis. And it's the backbone of our society. We can have division of labor because we can pay each other. Yeah. You can do podcasts and many other things. Others can bake bread. Others can ride cabs. The reason it works is because after we've done our work or service, we get paid. And so that's why it's the underlying technology and the underlying use case of our life.
Yeah.
And what's more fun is it's the most honest use case in our lives. You can share, tweet, chat, like, post, all good things, but the true preferences that you have come when your money moves. Mm-hmm. Depending on where you spend your money, that's your true self. The rest could be played or wrong or changing. Payment is extremely honest.
Yeah.
And so to have a very frequent, very important, and very honest use case is about the best thing you can work on. But to your question, that's why it's very different than the previous companies I had, where whatever music you listen to or videos you watch or ads you skip is interesting, but it's not as mission critical as the payment space. And so since I underestimated what that really means, it's highly regulated. The companies dealing in the space have to deal with people's identities, have to deal with other people's money, either holding it, guaranteeing it, safeguarding it. And so there's many rules in the process. There is, of course, rightfully so, lots of legal and compliance. There is lots of politics in the end in the game. And so, yeah, it's a very different ballgame. And so that's why dozens of times I had a strong feeling that building new rails and rules to do this use case is really, really a mission impossible. And so, yeah, I could tell you hundreds now.
I guess you're changing people's core at their core, basically their identity almost. Like if I prefer to pay with a certain way, or if I have been using a certain bank for my whole life, then changing that around means that I'm gonna change something fundamental.
If you change banks, and people usually do this once or twice a year at most, right? A life.
I was going to say.
A life at most. That's not so much what, of course, we are after, but you're changing the rules and rails how people pay. And it's a great question, by the way, because in the Western world, it works flawlessly well. Mm-hmm. You go click, click, tap, right? You double click and you tap, and it's beautiful. So why would you change the way you pay? There's no reason to do it, at least not in our jurisdictions. But then to still have the crazy ambition to change the underlying fundamentals of how the money moves, how the rules are of how it moves, who gets money in the process, who gets data in the process, that's what we're after. Yeah. And that's, as you say, quite tricky, because doing it the way it's done today is flawless. Yeah. So that's one of the challenges in the journey, clearly.
For your background, what is it? Do you think it's been a blessing or a curse that you don't have a payments background before you engage with Bluecode?
Good question. I guess half-half. So in one way, it's a blessing because you can rethink how this works. Yeah. But that means in payments especially, there's 3 dimensions. The technical dimension. So what actually happens when you have your phone or your card or your QR code? When you tap that or when you scan something, what technically goes between the parties? Yeah. Second, what happens legally in that process? The contracts behind this, what is happening? And the third, commercially. Who pays and who gets, and how are the rules of who gets what? And that comes along with the data, of course. So in one way, a blessing, because if you are new, you have to really, really deeply understand all 3, down to the API calls that exist and the paragraph 16a.5 in the scheme rules, and maybe the law regulating it. So you really have to otherwise you can't add value. And so that's a blessing, because it's fun to explore a new industry in such detail, but a curse that if you have to do it from scratch, it takes a little longer than what probably the people in the payments business.
Yeah, true.
It's normal, right?
Yeah, but I remember when I joined the payments industry or payments recruitment, that was in 2013. I remember that I didn't think about what was going on in the background when it comes to payments, right? It's such a given. You don't think about you have to pay that day, but you do want to have a convenient way to pay. I can imagine you coming in with a blank sheet almost, not having that baggage. You can have that outsider's perspective and look at what's going on in the payment space and think, all right, okay, I see this is missing, or I see there's room for improvement there. Whereas if you're head deep, you're sometimes so biased towards one side or the other. I guess in that sense, it must have been
absolutely
beneficial.
because I have my entire startup life has always been, and that's just a coincidence, I guess, when the industry in question is in a format change. So back then, when in heyday.com time, San Francisco, it was format change in the digital music space. We used to listen to our music with CDs, and then usually a 10 plus minus year lifespan, it changes. The format changes. Now our kids, they stream, some download, but it has changed in format. And usually when there is a format change, that's usually an amazing time to disrupt the underlying fundamentals of the entire business. So when a CD gets sold, certain stakeholders make certain money, there's distribution channels, there's contracts underlying it, etc. When you stream money, there's new players, and that might be new revenue streams and new rules of how it works. And so I dabbled back then, 1999, in that digital music space, clueless about music industry, but very similar actors. I mean, the Googles with YouTube, the Apple Music, so very similar players. And the whole industry got dismantled and put back together again, and now it works very different than it used to work 20 years ago. And then came digital video, and then came digital advertising, always a format change. You had DVDs, now we do Netflix, etc. Same in ads. Everybody always had the same ad on TV. When you stream content, my wife might get a different advertising based on her preferences than I. And so that's why now the fourth gig is in payment. The card is going into the phone. That's a 10-year span. It's already well underway. And the big question when you come out of it is, how are the rules of the game now? Is it the same actors that decide the technical, legal, and commercial framework? Or did this change? And that's the passion to say, format change yet again. Maybe this is a chance for Europe, and we can go through that, to at least have a European way to pay and use these years of format change to establish that idea. Because once the format change has taken place and people got used to consuming or spending or earning in a new way, then it gets really tricky again to disrupt an industry. So that's
people are now changing their behaviors, as we just said, and therefore there is room for new players to come in.
Exactly right.
So going to kind of the basics then, Bluecode, if you have a friend, you need to explain Bluecode to, goes into a shop, wants to buy a coffee. How does Bluecode work? How would you explain it for someone who has no idea about payments?
That they take an app, a Bluecode capable app, and they show a blue barcode to the cashier. The cashier will scan that code, and in real time, the money shall be deducted from your checking account to, in the end, get transferred to the merchant. So you don't tap a card or put a card into the terminal, but you show a one-time use barcode or QR code. That's what Bluecode does. We have 400 member banks to distribute the Bluecode solution in Austria and Germany. And so that's basically then a new technical way to do it, a new legal foundation to do it, and thus a new commercial framework of who makes money in the process.
So if I go into a coffee shop, I show my phone with the Bluecode QR code, then that gets scanned and then it gets deducted automatically from my bank account.
Exactly.
So the barcode is linked to my bank account.
That's correct. Basically. Because the barcode rotates every 4 minutes. It exists only once. Once it expires, it's gone forever. It's a quite secure method because before the barcode shows up, you have to do your Face ID and then it unlocks the one-time use barcode. The magic here is, and that's now what's called in the industry, the merchant scan method. So if the merchant scans the user, you're actually paying into the cash register. That's a very different behavior than paying into a card terminal. And it comes with implications. The good implications are you can scan at any point in time. So you can scan your apple, banana, the Bluecode, and then the pear and the oranges. So you're scanning while the basket is still alive. You cannot today or easily do this, at least not in production, in the card world.
No.
In the card world, you wait until it's done, the cashier presses a button, the cash register is closed, the basket, and now the amount is transferred to the payment terminal. So in our case, we can still manipulate the basket. You can say, wait, 20% off of all hot food items. And that still works. It's not a cashback in the end, but it's a real deduction in real time as you're buying. You can also bring down the loyalty card at the same time. So you don't have to show that ever again. You only show your Bluecode and all your value adds come in one scan only. And so these are the benefits you can bring in speed, convenience to this use case.
Yeah.
But of course, for the downside, you have to integrate into the register and you have to explain a new way of doing it to the user and the cashier. So that's your ups and downs.
You don't need a terminal, basically.
For that, you don't, correct?
No, right, okay.
Yeah.
And from a user point of view, I'm the consumer. How many actions do I need to take in order to get that barcode up and to pay?
You open the app, and then the Face ID basically happens automatically, and your code shows up. So you basically, instead of double-click and tap, you open the app and you show.
Yeah, okay.
So it is stand today probably slightly slower than the click tap.
Yeah.
But now with the European Commission compromise with Apple, the next generation of apps can hijack the double click and become as fast as Apple Pay when you want to launch the solution.
Yeah.
And so I think over the next year, you will see quite a few of the payment products make use of that. Make use of the antenna, the iOS antenna, to do payment directly, or to make use of at least a quick launch of the banking app, right?
So Bluecode can be accessed by double-clicking, like you can now with a card on Apple Pay?
The latest iOS updates allow you to rewire where that double-click shall go. I mean, it's brand new, right? So there's not many yet who've taken advantage of the iOS antenna as well as the double-click. But I know of multiple. And we also are working with our partners on making sure the NFC capability as well as the convenience gets baked into the next generation banking apps.
And why would I use a Bluecode solution versus a card solution if I want to pay?
And that's the be-all, end-all question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So maybe to briefly spin back up, there is in the payment business that at least I've seen 5 good ways to pay. One part of the world or one industry uses the mobile phone number as an alias to somehow trigger a payment.
Yeah.
The other is using some Bluetooth beacons. That is vanishing as we speak. There's a few solutions and they're dismantling, so that might not make it until the end. There is the merchant scan method that we mentioned. That has many benefits, especially at large merchants where there's loyalty. So I think that one will survive in the segment of large merchants with loyalty elements. Then you have the user scan method. The user scans a QR code. That will very surely survive in places, the long tail, where there is no card terminal, right? Your police festival and then your flower shop and your farmer's market, where you just put up a sticker, right? And off you go.
Yeah.
And then the 5th way, which we Europeans believe is the most frequent, is the contactless. So you tap on card. So why would you use other ways than just tapping your card? The 3 methods that we believe have benefits are the merchant scan, user scan, and tap. And if you manage to get the right method at the right time, you can actually create better payment moments. So when you're at a farmer's market and there is no terminal, when you double click, it will pull up the camera and allow you to scan that QR code to buy your stuff.
Yeah.
If you're in a large merchant chain and you double click, it should pull up your barcode that's linked to your loyalty and all the vouchers to get you a cheaper basket. If you're in just a random shop somewhere, there's a terminal, you can double click and you will be tapping, and that's a good experience if you just want to pay. So I think the magic will be to create better payment moments by knowing where you are and giving you the best technology to pay.
I think that loyalty piece is interesting. So far, the solutions that I've seen indeed are reliant on the loyalty card being linked to your bank card or credit card, so that at checkout, you then have to, you tap to pay and then automatically you get the loyalty. However, there's a lot of supermarket chains, especially in the Netherlands, that you only get the discount if you tap your loyalty card. And that's very difficult to process that when you've actually already done the transaction. Whereas here it sounds like you could start with just tapping, just scanning the QR code or the barcode, then scan your products and the loyalty is immediately deducted.
Exactly. And that's exactly why, we basically turn around the sequence of things which enable all this magic.
Yeah.
Because if you first scan the payment token is secure and unique to fetch your loyalty token. Mm-hmm. Now you can do everything again while the basket is still around. In your card-linked loyalties, usually the basket is closed, then you tap, and all you can do now is, give you points in hindsight, right? Maybe give you a cash back in hindsight, but you can no longer really create and manipulate a great basket that is cheaper and that gives you points during the transaction. Even more, if you pay into the cash register, you can get a full receipt with all the goods, because the cash register is the heart and soul of a merchant. Yeah. So it has all the items, 15 bananas for X, and you can attach that digital receipt in the transaction, which again, in the card transaction is quite difficult because you're dealing with a card terminal that's 10, 20, 30 year standards. It's not fit to give you a basket receipt. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I'm saying I think where this whole payment will go, at least that's our assumption, is to be more context sensitive to, I know where you are and I can give you the best payment moment if you leverage the right technology at the right merchant.
So you have then, let's take a fictional example. You have bank offering payments through the Bluecode infrastructure, basically, right? So I'm a consumer now and I use bank and I want to start paying. But I need to be convinced. I still have Visa, MasterCard. I still might have other payment methods. What is kind of the main concern you're trying to overcome now when it comes to consumers, right? What do you see consumers having as main concern where you feel you guys have a competitive advantage to maybe others?
Right. I think the way that some of these brands can tackle this is by the sheer love for their app and their brand. Mm-hmm. If you have any of those, especially Challenger, but many traditional banks too, users are actually quite happy with their app, right? Because it does many cool things. So if these players can now say, look, now with a double click, you can also pay with my bank app. You can pay, everything stays within bank, the data of what you're doing, and you can pay now all over the world from your bank account by just double clicking your phone. So hopefully the change in behavior is non-existent, right? Mm-hmm. Today, you double click and then you land in the Apple Wallet, which is a great product, right? Usually your MasterCard, debit, or Visa is in the wallet. Again, all great products. The difference now would be you do the same double click and you just pay directly from your bank app, straight from your account. So, will that excite the user? Will it excite the bank? The world will tell. Yeah. My hope, of course, is that this appeals to at least those that want to offer a bigger acceptance grid in places if you travel a lot, right? And also, of course, the economics might be very much in your favor because if you, of course, do payment out of your banking app, you no longer have to pay the Apple Wallet fee, right? And that's a very European specialty. And so I would think that some of the banks are eager to leverage that new world starting 2025 and beyond, which actually I'm quite sure about. Forget Bluecode left and right. I'm quite sure and hopeful that several banks in 2025 onwards and several domestic schemes will leverage that new world of being able to tap straight out of their apps.
Yeah, I guess if I look at it from myself, from a consumer point of view, if I really try to break down what am I looking for in a payment method, is that I can pay anywhere I like, which it sounds like you have more acceptance points, even if you're not terminal dependent, basically. So you got that covered. It is gonna be convenient. So with you launching now Tap to Pay, I can see that you're basically, from a convenience point of view, similar to what all the other payment methods are that I'm at least using. Right. And thirdly, I think that loyalty piece is super strong. Like right now, I have loyalty cards all over the place. I hardly use them because I don't know where they are. And with actually integrating that is I see that as a USP why I would start using a payment method such as this. And to be honest, if it's European or Brazilian or American, doesn't really matter to me. But the fact that is there would be for me a reason to move over. Well, there's only one person you got convinced now, so I guess that's a
but that shows. I think since payment is so frequent, so key to everyone's life, unfortunately, there's no golden bullet, right? No. We know from a fraction, as you said, 1, 2 out of 10 actually care about where does this come from? Is this sustainable in terms of European enough? But most don't, right? So for some, it's the loyalty. For some, it's the fact that you can pay at your farmer's market because you don't have cash with you right now, or you're jogging. In Austria, there's many huts up in the mountains where you're spending either hiking or running.
True.
And many of them don't have car terminals. So maybe it's these little moments that go, slightly better.
Yeah.
Right. And for some, it's a more philosophical. And we don't know if all totaled up, if it's enough, but at least that must be the ambition that for a few people and hopefully then more, this makes life slightly better than before. And that's where we get back to where we started this conversation, right?
So I guess you need to create more moments where people end up hiking in the mountains of Austria and remote places where they are kind of forced to use Bluecode and then make it part of their usual daily
or
behavior.
It's when they go 4 times a month to here, the largest food retailer is called Billa, and that's why they have their loyalty card. So let's see what it is. We're now doing parking, pay at pump, charge your e-vehicle. So whatever, I think it will be the collection of better moments that will tilt you over, but likely it's not going to be only one. Mm-hmm. So if you only have one good reason, then usually inertia means you keep doing what you're doing. So it's our job to be better, meaning to bring you more and more and more better payment moments that you decide to change ways.
If we go back to Bluecode, and I guess more the company you're trying to build or the culture you're trying to build, how would you, for your team here or for new candidates, what is the culture you're trying to build with Bluecode?
It's been actually the same in my previous ones, and it somehow I can't pull off a fully local team. Mm-hmm. I think it would be, in many ways, a bit more efficient if everybody was in the same office. But I've never managed it, so I gave up on it. We are actually quite remote first. So we have developers and people in the time zone, let's say in Brazil, we have in Thailand, we have in Europe. So we are just trying to find the most passionate, the most knowledgeable, frankly, the best people in the business to change this use case. And so if our folks, and that's why I'm humbled and super happy to work with this team, because it's all about the mission. I usually say, nobody here has a job. You have a mission. Mm-hmm. And if you like being on this mission, then you're in the right spot, because then there's no limits in terms of trying to chase that dream. We do get together once a year. We invite everyone from around the world that works for us to Europe to meet up in person, right? To actually get to know each other physically. But of course, it's highly digital. We Slack our way through things. And so we're a very remote first, very just on the individual, and out of really strong people build an even stronger team. But you can sit in your colo in Bali, and that's totally fine because it's great there. So it's actually a smart move.
Yeah.
And so therefore we're quite remote first and just built on merit and on passion. That's basically what we are here for.
How do you go about building a remote culture?
It's actually quite a difficult one, but it helps if you're so remote friendly, meaning to actually have a call with our CTO. He's in Brazil most of the time. And if you have our head of security, then he's in Amsterdam. And so if you want to work with this group, then on day one, you know that this is the only way this is going to work. And this is actually then forcing that it must become efficient. So there's these stand-ups, of course, that the guys and girls have all the time. And then great digital platforms to share knowledge. Oftentimes we do, and when we coach stuff in teams, so at least 2, so that it's always you have someone else on the globe worrying and working on the same thing, so you're hopefully never alone in trying to solve. So there's a few things to do it. Of course, it's never easy, so I won't pretend it is, but I think it's in our DNA, and therefore it's served us well, because we managed to get people on the team that, frankly, all of them could work in other places and maybe even earn more money. So we're really glad that they're on the mission here. And that's all that counts, because in the end, you can only build this stuff with people.
Yeah.
Companies don't build anything, and CEOs build nothing, right? It's the people that get up, turn on their keyboards, and think long and hard how to build things like interoperability down to the nuts and bolts of every single attribute in every API call. That needs really solid people, one by one. If any one of my team is sick or leaving, it shows. I mean, these are really good people, and so we need every one of them, and we look for more. So we have open slots if anybody feels.
I guess you're looking for a specific type of person if you have a remote first company for people who are, I guess, more independent, maybe a bit more senior as well, whether that is from a work experience or from a life experience, and I guess people who are ready to really make a difference in this, right? It's not just making a dent in the payments industry. It's really turning, like we just said, consumer behavior around, merchant behavior around, just generally having a big impact.
Right. It's there is great folks, of course, in the industry to make any fraud rate go slightly down, any acceptance speed go down. These are great things to tackle. Mm-hmm. In our case, it's literally more when we talk about half of our challenges are, this has never been done before. How should this be done? How can you make sure that technically, legally, and commercially, this is actually solid? And then, of course, that's the other half of the team. How can you explain this stuff to fellow banks, fellow schemes, and in the end user, why they should do this in the first place? So there's so many problems and so many challenges and so many ups and downs. Again, you have to love doing this, otherwise this is not a great job. So you have to love being in this mission here. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. And it's a mission rather than a job.
I would argue, because a job is where you do something that you know well, and as long as you do it, then your job is fine. You'll have your job. You'll get more pay every year, and you'll get everything fine. In our case, again, so many times I pull up my team and says, guys, I have no clue how to do this. How are we doing this? And then we'll have to noodle around, and we fail multiple times, and we say, nope, this cannot work. But when you do get the knack of it and it works, that's the joy, right? When you go like, see, there was a way to do this, and that's what's the fun part.
Is privacy and data something? I mean, there's a lot of talk around that at the moment, right? Is that something that you feel you have a competitive advantage over with others? Is that important to you guys?
For us, it's one of the driving pieces. Of course, being Europeans, we have a strong sense that it's nobody's business to know what you spend your money on. Except, of course, your house bank that needs to know by the laws and rules. And so, yes, Bluecode in and of itself as a platform is, in the highest sense, called in the legal term anonymous, because Bluecode with reasonable means has no clue about the identity of the payer. Only our issuers do. So yes, so if it doesn't even hit us, no phone number, no IBAN, no name, then it can't stream downstream into the process. So yes, it's quite a key element. But again, the MasterCards, Visas, Apple, these are very professional companies. They care equally about making sure the data is safe and sound. So it probably is, in some sense, key. But I think what's the real USP is, if anybody cares, is that it's a European way to pay. So at the end, this might be very abstract. And in the end, it might not be that big of a reason. But again, that's why we're driven here at Bluecode, and I know in many other EMSA colleagues, is in the end, and that comes back to the beginning of our talk, I guess. In the end, we will only have a good life here in Europe, wealth and a good standard of living, if we produce value, if we are in the value chain of what normal people do day in, day out. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have any value in the, no space in the value chain when somebody watches a movie, listens to a song, watches an ad, or pays, right? At some point, the wealth of this continent, and it is already unfortunately happening, is either growing slower or declining. Once you have declining growth and declining wealth, usually social strife starts to happen because we're used to the way of living and none of us want to step back. But if you don't have any value in any digital product whatsoever, that will happen to our kids. I have 3 kids, 6, 8, and 12 years old. And I don't really know if we stay here and if they get into the workforce in this continent, where exactly are we creating a huge value add as the world gets more digital? And that's a scary thought.
Yeah, it's a scary thought for sure.
And so if we can make even the tiniest difference in saying payment, we can do the European way. And the value chain goes purely in Europe. The issuers make money. The one who creates the app creates money. And the merchant pays a fair fee that is oftentimes below any of the international card products. So everybody wins. And it's a European way to handle this important use case. If we can help in that, then job is done. But frankly, in the end, we'll see, because usually convenience beats long-term thinking any day.
Yeah.
And so, the chips shall fall where they may.
This is just a pause in the conversation, not the end of it. Mark your calendars for December 4th when we'll share part 2 of this insightful discussion with Christian. Get ready for his expert predictions on payments in 2025 and a special announcement from Bluecode that could reshape the industry. Stay tuned because you definitely won't want to miss it.